My name is Fogo Salami. I'm 14 years old, and I originally based in CMIT South, Upper Marlboro, Maryland. It's a pleasure to meet you, and I hope that we can get some knowledge out of this interview. So, my number one question is, at what age did you start thinking about politics, and how did you, like, what inspired you to think about politics?
Sure. So should I look at you or should I look at the camera?
Look at the camera.
The camera.
Okay. So my name is Brooke Lierman. I'm the 34th Comptroller of the state of Maryland and the first woman to hold this position. I'm honored to be here today with my interviewer, who is a campaigner himself and met my brother on the campaign trail, and delighted that you took the time to come out and be here today, so thank you. So I don't remember exactly when I started thinking about politics or public service, because from the youngest of ages, my parents taught me the power of public service and the importance of public service, and that we were really blessed and given a lot, and that we had a duty to give back, but also that my parents, it's not like they got where they got on their own, right? My father was the first person in his family to graduate from college. My mother was the first woman in her family to graduate from college, and they had help along the way. Whether it was good public school teachers, people who believed in them, jobs and employers who took a chance on them, fellowships. My dad got a fellowship that helped him move from the Midwest to DC to get a chance, a new start. And so I just always believed that government can be a force for good, to really help people fulfill their potential. And I wasn't sure that I wanted to be in government or work in government, but I knew that government mattered and I believed in it. And so I actually worked on campaigns, right? So when I was in, I guess I was in 8th grade, we had a family friend who decided to run for state delegate. And she took me out and showed me how to knock on doors and showed me how to fold campaign literature and stuff envelopes. And her name is Cheryl Kagan, and she's a state senator now, but she won that election for delegate. And then she encouraged me to apply to be a page. So I applied to be a page in the Maryland House of Delegates, where I was a page in high school. Then I also applied to be a page in the U.S. Senate, and I was a page in the U.S. Senate in the summer of 1996. I'm not that young, 1996 in high school. So it was really amazing to see government in action, and really inspiring. Especially some of what I saw in 1996 was really moving. It was when they were debating the Welfare Reform Act, which was a big deal. And so I learned a lot, and it really made me curious about, what it would be like to work in government, not necessarily to run for office, but to work in government. But it took quite a while for me to get to the point where I wanted to actually run for office myself. But those are all things that sort of little by little along the way, I was able to start learning about the importance of government and how it worked.
So, in order to put yourself in the political community, you've got to get your name out there. Mm-hmm. So how did you get your name out there? How did you get people to vote for you?
Sure. It's a good question. So when I first ran for state delegate, it was 2014. Well, I launched my campaign a year before the election, so June of 2013. Now, I ran for state delegate in Baltimore City. I grew up in Bethesda. When I moved to Baltimore after law school, I was a clerk for a while, a federal law clerk, and then I worked at a civil rights and disability rights law firm. But I also started getting really involved in my neighborhood. I joined my neighborhood association. I was looking at schools and parks. I was planting trees, and I was really frustrated at the bus because the bus was always late or wouldn't show up at all. And sort of started getting really involved in transit and the need for better, more reliable transit. And ultimately decided that I wanted to run for state delegate because I wanted to champion some of these issues where I felt like Baltimore was being left behind and wasn't getting the state investment that it really needed to become everything that it could be. And so when I decided to run for delegate, at first I talked to a lot of friends. I had been involved in my community, but of course if I was running, I was going to represent many communities. So I started getting to know other communities as well. I was doing a lot of pro bono work, representing neighborhood groups actually. So I'd learned about some of the challenges with dangerous liquor stores and bad bars. And so it really started to getting to know the city and the communities more. But when I started running for office, it wasn't just getting them, to know the 30 people who showed up to a community meeting. It was getting to know everybody. So I knocked on a lot of doors. So I was representing a very urban district, right? Lots of row homes, not suburban, very dense. And my campaign team and I put together our plan, our targeted voters, who we thought was going to vote, who we thought might vote. And then we produced our campaign literature, and I just got out and started knocking on doors. And every night and every weekend day, after work, Monday through Friday, I would go drive. I would not drive home to have dinner with my family. I would drive to a new neighborhood to do door knocking, and I would door knock for a couple hours, and then I would go home. So I knocked on about 14,000 doors that year. That meant I, knocked the entire district several times because people weren't home one time, so I'd go back and knock again, or they were home one time and they liked me, but they didn't commit to voting for me, so I went back and knocked on their door again to see if they'd commit to voting for me. So really it was about just knocking on doors, getting out there and talking to people. We made a couple videos that we'd show on YouTube and Facebook as well, but really it was me personally door knocking and then also building up a team of people who went to door knock with me.
Did you win that race?
I did. So I was the top vote getter. There were 5 or 6 people running for 3 spots, and I was happy and excited to be the top vote getter in the 2014 election.
What would you advise young adults like me who are interested in politics, but they also don't know where to start?
I think that you should start with the issues you care about, right? So if you really care about the environment, for instance, getting involved with organizations that care about the environment, whether that's the League of Conservation Voters or Sierra Club, or maybe there isn't an organization that does the work that you really care about, and so you decide to sort of just work with some friends on your own to target an issue. There was a group in Baltimore, there's a lot of plastic litter, and there was a group of students who decided that they were tired of having styrofoam food trays, and they had styrofoam food trays in their schools. And they said, this is not okay. This is terrible for the environment. We do not want styrofoam food trays anymore. And they started a group called Baltimore Beyond Plastic. And they grew their ranks around getting rid of styrofoam food trays. And they lobbied their principals, and then they went and lobbied and talked to the school board and the CEO, and they said, we care about this. We're getting students to sign on letters of support. And eventually the school board said, okay, you're right. We shouldn't have styrofoam school trays, and they got rid of them. So then that group of students, a bunch of high school students, said, okay, well, we want to get rid of all styrofoam in Baltimore City. And so they met with the mayor, they had rallies, and they started working with groups, and I worked with them too and supported their efforts and got rid of styrofoam in Baltimore City. So, and then we passed it at the state level as well, and they came to rally with us. So, I think you sort of find the issue you care about, and then you work on it in the best way that you can. I think sometimes, in fact, young people are uniquely situated to do that work. So I'd say that's how to get started. Politics with a capital P, right? Party politics. It doesn't have to be where you start. I don't even think it's where you end sometimes. It's, the reason, I ran for office to make a difference in people's lives, right? And not to have a title. And so I think, all of us has something to contribute wherever we are, and we have to figure out what our talents and our tools are, and then use them in the best way that we can to leave the world a little bit of a better place.
Okay. Where did you school at, like college, and what degrees did you major in?
Sure. I'm a Montgomery County Public High School graduate. I went to Walt Whitman High School in Montgomery County, and then I went to Dartmouth College in New Hampshire. I majored in I made up my major. It was history modified with social movements. Basically, I went through the course book. It used to be paper back then. I'm sure it's all online now. I went through my course book and I circled all the courses I thought were interesting. And it turned out that most of them were about social uprisings and organizing for change. And so we put all those together, and I worked with somebody in the history department to come up with that major. And then I went to law school several years later. I took 4 or 5 years off, 4 years off between college and law school, and I went to the University of Texas School of Law.
The next question. So what do you do as a comptroller, and what are your responsibilities as a comptroller?
Great question. So definitely the number one question I got on the campaign trail, and I still get today, is what is a comptroller? Well, the Maryland comptroller is a unique role in all of American state government. There is no other statewide elected financial officer with the same powers and duties that I have. And the Comptroller of Maryland in the Constitution is charged with the general superintendence of the fiscal affairs of the state. So it's pretty broad. I like to think of it in 3 ways. One, I'm like the elected CFO of the state. So our agency sees every dollar in and every dollar out. We are the general accountant for the state. We pay all the bills. We pay all the staff, right? Every state employee, we pay. We send them their paycheck. Number 2, I sit on all the fiscal and financial boards in the state. So that includes the Board of Public Works, which is me and the governor and the treasurer, where we approve or deny, all major contracts in Maryland. Mm-hmm. I'm the vice chair of the State Retirement and Pension Board, and a member of, the Bureau and Board of Revenue Estimates and more. So lots of boards, like alphabet soup, so many boards, BPW, SRPS, MPAC, all these, Ms. BIDFA, so many boards. And then third, I'm the revenue administrator of the state, which is a nicer way of saying tax collector. So we collect the taxes, but we also send out the refunds. So we do that work, as well as all the auditing and compliance and, checking for fraud, all of that work as well. So at the end of the day, we see every dollar in and every dollar out, but my goal for our agency is really to be a partner in creating communities that are more equitable, more resilient, and more prosperous, so that every Marylander can reach their full potential.
Okay, what made you campaign for it? Like, what pushed you? I must get this office.
Why did I run? What about this? Well, I served on the Appropriations Committee for 5 years in the General Assembly, and that's the committee tasked with the budget, right? And so you pass the budget, and then the money goes to the agencies and to the Board of Public Works, where it's approved. And so I learned so much about the importance of the Board of Public Works. I also had the opportunity just to see, when they make a decision, it can change how we do things through procurement, or through, because it's everything. It's from, building streets and hiring the contractors to do that, and approving the contractors to do that, to how we take care of foster care kids, and wetlands licenses and environmental work. And so we just see the whole, to paying wrongfully convicted individuals. So we see all of it through the Board of Public Works. So I knew just how important it was. But also I thought that there was so much more that we could be doing from the Office of the Comptroller to help build a state that was more equitable, and to report on the state of the economy, and to use data from the office to drive decision making. So I just get very excited about, I think, the potential of the Office of the Comptroller to make a difference in people's lives. And so here I am.
Congratulations.
Thank
on
you.
your victory.
Thank you.
What is the hardest part about being the comptroller? What's the hardest part?
Sure. The hardest part about being the comptroller, I think, is the hardest part about being any elected official. And that is that change is too slow. Right? I get really frustrated because I see what we need to do and I can't do it immediately. Or I see a challenge, somebody brings a challenge to me and I say, oh, well, we could solve this by doing X, Y, or Z, but then it's bringing in X, bringing in Y, bringing in Z, putting it all together, passing it or implementing it, and it just takes time. And so I just get frustrated, about how long it can take to get things done. And because, people don't have that long to wait. Sometimes we just get one life. And we never know how long it's going to be. So I just get frustrated sometimes at how long things take, and I, push, but I can't move mountains. But I love it on the other hand, right? Because I also then get to see the fruits of our labor and see amazing things that people are doing all over the state each and every day. So it can be really frustrating and then also really inspiring.
Okay, what does your daily schedule look like as a elected official?
Great question. Every day is different. My schedule is insane, but every day is different. So, I might be on the phone on my drive from Baltimore to Annapolis with our risk management team talking about setting up a fire drill for our 600 employees here in Annapolis, right? And making sure that we can keep them safe. And then when I get here, I might have a meeting with a student or a meeting with a lobbyist about a client who has an issue, or a meeting with our team. Maybe we're meeting with the compliance team to talk about the audits that we're doing. Or I might be editing documents that we're going to make flyers to send out and to give out to people. Or reviewing a new copy for a website. Or yesterday, I spent all day in Frederick. I was visiting, we have an office in Frederick. So we have our headquarters here in Annapolis, a large office in Baltimore, and then 11 offices all around the state, including one in Greenbelt in Prince George's County. So, it might be going to visit a team in Greenbelt, or going to visit some small businesses to talk with them about how we can do better. Or, today I spoke at a forum about broadband and the importance of broadband. So every day is a little bit different. I'm always overscheduled, but it's, I try to make sure that I'm out there talking to people about how the comptroller can work with them and be a partner with them.
Okay, last question. If you could restart your career over again, what would you do differently?
Well, I think if I had two lives to live, I would lead one life just as I am, working in state government and working as a civil rights and disability rights attorney and doing the organizing work. I feel so blessed and so lucky. I have a great husband and 2 amazing children, so I just feel like I need to pinch myself all the time, how lucky I am. If I had another life, I would go the international route, and I would think about how I could work at the international level in other communities in other countries at doing the organizing work, working with communities to do community development work, perhaps, or working in government, in some capacity as a foreign service or something in other countries.
Foreign service affairs?
Yeah, something like that. I just think it's so interesting, and it's not something that I've ever done, but it has always fascinated me. So I was actually supposed to join the Peace Corps. I was accepted to the Peace Corps after college, but because of a medical issue, I wasn't able to serve. And so I always think it's sort of the road not taken. So someday, in that next life, maybe I'll do that international work.
All right, that's the end of our interview. Thank you very much, Ms. Comptroller, for the interview. And
my pleasure. I'm delighted to be here.
Wish you the best of luck to completing your office and fulfilling your responsibilities as comptroller.
Well, thank you. I can't do it alone. It's all about partnering, and I appreciate your questions and your dedication to public service, and I'm excited to follow your career throughout high school and beyond.
Thank you.
Yeah.